The following podcast is for informational purposes only. The hosts of Hope Matters and hopematters.life are peer recovery specialists sharing lessons learned from lived experiences, research, and psychological training. These podcasts are not intended to replace treatment from mental health professionals.
Right now, on our hopematters.life podcast, we interview the great actor, writer, and director Todd Stashwick.
You may have seen him in 12 Monkeys, Gotham, the original, Star Trek, Law and Order, Supernatural, Revolution, and the list goes on. More recently, he's been in Think Like a Dog, The Way Back, and Kim Possible.
For centuries, great minds have heralded the importance of creative thinking. Creativity is limitless, which means we can be limitless too.
So hold on tight as we explore hope and perseverance with Todd Stashwick. Okay, we're recording now.
Woohoo! Hey. So
let the string of profanities begin.
Yes.
The basis is we all are creative.
Yeah.
Now, to answer your other question about using our voices for hope, using our voices to make the world a better place, here's my theory. The greatest tool that I think we have, the thing that saves mankind.
It starts right now on hopematters.life, where hope brings health.
Welcome to Hope Matters, right here on hopematters.life, where hope brings health.
Welcome to the next episode of hopematters.life, where hope brings health. I'm Louie Cruz.
And I'm Jamy Joy.
And we're both hosts and co-founders of hopematters.life. And boy, do we have a treat. This next episode is an exciting one, as we'll be offering perspectives that are hard to find.
As you know, our mission at hopematters.life is to offer fascinating concepts and powerful interviews that inspire hope.
And now we get to hear from a person who's achieved so much in an industry wrought with obstacles. And now his work can be seen everywhere.
Among this actor, writer, and director's most recent work is Think Like a Dog on demand, Kim Possible on Disney+, a film directed by Justine Bateman called Violet, The Way Back with Ben Affleck, and that's also on demand, and the TV series 12 Monkeys, found on Hulu.
While he will be talking about aspects of his creative field, he will also be sharing the backstory of how he achieved success and how he kept himself going in the face of adversity.
This interview is sure to bring hope and inspiration to your life, the same way it brought hope and inspiration to our own.
And now, without further ado, we begin our interview with the great actor, writer, and director, Todd Stashwick. Todd, thank you so much for being with us.
It is great to be here.
Well, what inspired you to start acting? Start with the basic questions.
The one version of the answer is I always was acting, and thank God there was a profession that matched up with things that I was already doing as a kid that would pay me. In that I was, as you can see, I was a nerdy boy. I was a nerd kid. Like, I wasn't athletic. I was an imaginator. Some of my earliest memories are playing with Planet of the Apes action figures and Star Trek action figures, and then Star Wars hits in '77. And when it hit, May of '77, I was 8. Yeah, I was 8. So that then consumed much of my play. So I spent all my time with my cousin playing with our Star Wars action figures, drawing Star Wars pictures. I was always pretending to be Han. He was always Luke, and it could have been as simple as I had brown hair, he had blonde hair. Like it could have been that simple. Yeah. And so that sort of led me down the road of the power of storytelling and the power of imagination and the sort of the Joseph Campbell. And as a kid, it's all about pew, pew, pew. But as an adult, it's all about the monomyth, and it's about the hero's journey, and it's about how we, of humble beginnings, can overcome great odds, which is the story, except that he wasn't humble beginnings. He was the son of a princess. Anyway, so Luke Skywalker is royalty. But we didn't know that in the first film. We just knew he was a farm boy who blew up the Death Star. then for the longest time, I think when I entered high school, because of all the drawing, I thought I was going to be a cartoonist. Like I had all my Garfield books and Snoopy, and I was drawing a lot of cartoons and comic strips. And I actually thought animation was the route that I was going to go, but I could not, I didn't like people critiquing my drawings. I didn't I couldn't handle that, because to me, and I knew that their goal ultimately, or I know now, was to make me better at what I was doing, like give me guidance. But I just was like, no, that's the inside of my head. You can't tell me it's like wrong. Right. Like I can't be critiqued on my drawing. But I was also simultaneously doing plays in junior high school and high school and whatnot. And I think around sophomore or junior year of high school, the idea of going to art school fell away, and the click to dedicate myself to acting around 16 or 17. And I also was getting a great deal of validation from teachers that this is a direction that this is a horse you should be riding in that direction. So around 17 was when I made the firm decision that this is what I was going to dedicate my life to. But it was always going to be some form of art. But I was always the kid who was making people laugh, and I would watch the Donnie and Marie show, and I would try to imitate Donny Osmond doing John Wayne. I was doing impressions as a kid. I would do Elvis for my mom because it would delight her.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And you know, two things. First of all, Donnie's a nice guy.
Oh, good. I'm not surprised. No, Donnie and Marie, man, like those heady 70s variety show days, Sonny and Cher, and didn't Jim Stafford have a show, and weren't there puppets? Like I was that kid who grew up like I grew up in the 70s, and then I came of age in the 80s because I turned 21 in 88. So my junior high school and high school years were the 80s, but like this is the world, Todd. You are born, and now look at it, was the 70s. I was born in 68, late 68. So the 70s loom large for me in terms of music, in terms of a lot of like the things that I adore and tastes that were firmly planted. I mean, I know junior high school and high school, the 80s were big, but when I reach back for that warm glow of nostalgia, it's the 70s.
Mm-hmm. Best music, I think.
Bow, bow, bow.
Well, it sounds like it's kind of in your blood, like you've just been born with this acting bug. It just was
like, I don't know that other people aren't like that. Like that's just how I was. I liked imagination driven product. I'm drawn to them in story, the Tolkien of it all, the Lucas, the Spielberg, all of those influences. Like if you think about 1977, Star Wars came out. The Rankin and Bass Hobbit came out, Dungeons and Dragons was being born, and Atari.
Yeah.
Like, and I was 8. Like, what? So, like, I just had, there was a golden age of just really great, I think it was a great marriage of technology meeting the expression of imagination. Mm. So the leaps that were made with ILM and the leaps that were made with computer graphics and whatnot, we were able to visually tell the stories that we were already telling on the page or in comic books, of which I was devouring those as well. So it's not that I was trying to escape anything. Like I wasn't that like my comedy comes from pain type thing. I just dug being funny, and I dug making people laugh, and my heroes were Bill Murray, and I wanted to be a Ghostbuster because that, again, it was the marriage of my sci-fi horror stuff and comedy, Saturday Night Live. Like those were the big influences on me. And so because they had profound effects on me, I wanted to have profound effects on people. Right. Like I wanted to give that to someone else. Like I said, I was a Star Wars Dungeons and Dragons kid, and those things were not the culture hip at the time. Those were the nerd, the geeks inherited the earth now, but at the time, we were the ones that were like, oh, you're into that? You watch Battlestar Galactica?
I love that show.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But I was that kid because like I found a like-minded tribe of other kids that weren't athletic, that weren't, we weren't the bullies, and then acting allowed me a greater circle of friends and acceptance in a field riddled with criticism and rejection.
I had some quotes here. One of them being creativity is intelligence having fun. It's Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
And I think something that is perhaps most relevant today is that creativity involves breaking out of established patterns in order to look at things in a different way.
I love that. What's interesting is a lot of people say that they're not creative people, but everybody, and this sounds really cloying, but everybody dreams at night. So your brain has the capacity to create, and creativity often is the when you take two disparate ideas and you try and harmonize with them, that third note that's created in the middle is often a new idea. And that's essentially what we do when we're dreaming is, without getting to like the science of the brain, but the evolution of dreaming came from us comparing past experiences with current situations to seek patterns so that we can solve some problems for living when we're awake. So that's why it's like, it's so weird. I was there with my dad on a beach, but you were there, but my dad hasn't been alive for a long time. And we were, and you know how dream logic goes. But what it's doing is it's taking old thoughts, memories, and whatnot, and finding a link to what's happening to you currently. And that is why often you'll dream about things from the past and things from the current concurrently in your dream, and then spinning them into metaphor. And from metaphor, we get lessons, and lessons we can apply to better living. So if we are trying to constantly problem solve for basic survival, right? And so the way the brain files things, which is where, oddly, this actually does circle back, which is where art comes from, is the brain does not classify everything you know about elephants in one folder. The brain is seeking patterns for the very purpose of going, if I see a recurring thing, I could either buoy it forward because it's helpful to living, or learn to steer around it because it is not helpful to living. So it starts to file like with like, and by that I mean, say the leg of an elephant is like a tree trunk.
Right.
In shape and color and texture. And so your brain will file those things in the same place. And then the public elucidation of that, if I say the elephant's leg was like a tree, you've immediately created art.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Right? And so what artists, I think what we do, because humans, all of us, we do this.
Yes.
We all do it because it's the way our brains are wired. Artists just realize we're doing it.
Do it intentionally.
Yes. And then strengthen the muscles to have access to that, and then strengthen the tools to which to express it, whether it's in song, in paint, in computer design, in poem, in book. Like, we strengthen the tools to express that which compares to that.
It's beautiful. I would say that a major drive of actors and other sorts of performers, or one of the drives, is to help bring a difference to society, or to help say something, and to make society a better place because they were part of it. And at the same time, in the process of trying to do it, they face so much rejection. I mean, 10 no's to 1 yes, or 20 no's to 1 yes. And what's interesting to me about you is your eloquence and how deeply you think. And I was wondering, how do you handle those issues of
rejection,
of working past rejection, and still holding on to this idea of using your craft to make the world a better place?
What I like about the word that you used, which is is craft. Craft requires skill. Skill is that which can be repeated. Pretty is not a skill. That's a luck of fate and genetic predisposition, certain amount of maintenance. And I'm not claiming to be pretty. I'm saying we right now in an Instagram culture we confuse beauty with talent. So craft is the ability to repeat, to do it again. And that's skill. Talent is raw sunlight. Skill is focusing that light into a laser beam with a magnifying glass, right? So part of the craft, I have a blue collar work ethic because my dad fixed machines my whole life. That's what he was. He had his name stitched above the pocket, and he was the first up and last home and never complained about his job. My mom, for a very long time, was in bookkeeping and accounting, and so A plus B equals C, 1 plus 2 plus 3. It's methodical. You get results by doing the math. My dad, you take the part, you put it there, you tighten the bolt, you do it. So I have a very blue collar work ethic to acting. It's funny because when I go home, I am the artist amongst my Midwest, the culture that I came from. But among a lot of artists and actors I'll know, I'm very blue collar. Like I'm very, I am the Midwest boy, the son of a mechanic. And he was a mechanic. He didn't work he was a machinist. Like he fixed machines. He could fix a car, and I cannot, but he could. But because I don't have airs and graces about the work until between action and cut, because you've done all the labor until you get to that set, and then they say action and cut, and that's when it gets alchemic. That's when the magic happens. Hopefully something sparks, something in the storytelling in the moment between the performers, the marriage of the writing, the lighting, all of that makes alchemy. And then I leave that to the muses. But everything before then, that's labor. That's reading, that's practicing, that's learning, that's driving to auditions, that's making sure your teeth are whitened. That's like, it's all the things that require one to be a publicly presented human. So with that, there's the realization that you go, it's one role and 400 guys are auditioning. So as a realist, the odds are not in my favor. You know what I'm saying? Like the odds aren't there. They just aren't. I have a 1 in 400 chance of getting this role. Mm-hmm. So when I don't get it, it's in my rear view mirror already. And I'm already trucking towards the next one. So the numbers game of it all is you go, well, at some point that merry-go-round is the brass ring, I'll grab it because I will be that 1 in 400. No. The longer you stay in the game, the more body of work you build, the smaller the pool to which, so now it's really down to being 1 in 10 of us. Or now it's down to between 1 in 4. Or they go, it's a straight offer because they've seen your work and they know exactly what color they want to paint with, and they want you to be that color. So you don't even have to audition for this here. Mm-hmm. It's yours. From an emotional standpoint, early on, I was just, when I was more 1 in 400 and less to go, well, no, I've got a body of work now that allows me to be in a smaller pool, I just immediately goes, yeah, I probably won't get this. Mm-hmm. So, and that's fine. And it wasn't defeatist. It actually is liberating because you just go, well, if I got nothing to lose, because it's probably not mine, I might as well swing big. Mm-hmm. And that swinging big is what then does separate you from the flock a little bit. When you start establishing your own voice as a performer.
So what kept you going when you were the 1 in the 400?
Well, I had a day job. I also was creating scenarios to which I wasn't dependent on getting that audition to scratch my artist's itch. I was doing classes in improv. I was performing at the Second City in the workshops. I was performing at the Improv Olympic. I was starting my own theater company. I was writing my own thing. So I wasn't waiting for permission to be validated as an artist. I was making art.
Right.
Gotcha.
So you just got out there and then you kept going and you didn't look back. That's beautiful.
Well, that's just it. I mean, well, now to answer your other question about using our voices for hope, using our voices to make the world a better place. Here's my theory. The greatest tool that I think we have, the thing that saves mankind is empathy. You know, that old, if you can walk in another man's shoes, right? And so we get, if we're lucky, we get 80 years of decent living before you know, spark plugs start going bad. We get 80 years if we are fortunate and we're not struggling with other issues. So we only have a finite amount of time and experience to live life. And in that life, empathy only grows if we have experiences that allow us to look through someone else's eyes. That is when we go, oh, that is what will kill racism, is when we see, oh, that person wants to feed their children and go to school and have a good meal and see a good movie and love somebody just like me. So when they bleed, I bleed. That's where the empathy comes from. Now, we only get 80 years to build those experiences to see through other people's eyes. That's where I come in. Because storytelling allows us to live so many other people's lives in an hour's worth of TV, in a 2-hour movie, in a book, that aren't our own experiences.
Right.
But it is the retelling of somebody else's experience that I can then live through, learn from, grow from, empathize with a fictional character. I can empathize with them because I'm invested and I have an imagination, and I can, if the writing is good and the acting is good and the storytelling is good, I am feeling for these people. I am going through their struggles with them, because that's the idea of storytelling, is to give you. So in those 80 years, suddenly my life experiences are not limited to the only ones that I personally can go through in a linear timeline. I can actually go to the 1800s and live in someone else's shoes, because that book still exists, and I can then, so we storytelling builds our empathy muscles. And if we build our empathy muscles, we then hold the tribe up.
Right.
Right?
Help each other stay up.
If I can see through someone else's eyes, and if I can feel for their pain, I am more than likely to want to lend a hand and lift them up, as opposed to build a wall.
Right.
It's beautiful. And as I had mentioned to you before we started doing this, the first time I really saw the power of your work personally was in Revolution. And
nasty man.
Yeah, you were playing a bad guy.
Welcome to my wheelhouse.
You were playing a bad guy, but I felt as though I was able to step into the character, and I wonder if we as audiences can step into kind of connect with your sort of reasoning, that we could develop our own empathetic skills.
If it's well written and well acted, when we're sitting in the movie theater, we get to field test our emotions with nothing at stake. So it's like going for a run, but not running from a cheetah. Like,
right.
I get to build my leg muscles and sweat and have the experience of raising my adrenaline and raising my cortisone, and raising all of the endorphins, and I get to have the experience without the fear of my life. So we often, when we're in a movie, we are contrasting a person's experience or comparing a person's experience of the fictional character on the screen with something we've gone through or haven't gone through, and suddenly go, oh my God, that's what it's like to go through that? Like if I see Schindler's List, I have not been through the Holocaust, but wow, now I'm seeing a man change his mind, a profiteer change his mind. And if we can see that mind change, then I can change my mind. And if I'm crying because a fictional person is dying, my empathy muscles are at work. And empathy is what will save the world. A lack of empathy is what kills it. It's when you see all these videos of just going after people from a selfish protective space. Now, if what we can do, as opposed to just ridiculing them online, if we can go, well, what pain brought, like it's that old phrase, who hurt you? What pain brought you to a place where you are consciously choosing to treat another human being this way?
Right. Traumatized people hurting traumatized people.
And the cycle goes on and on and on, right? We really love the go off on them. We love to watch people go off on somebody, as opposed to love, right? So we have a culture that embraces having our dukes up, and we embrace this idea, and I don't want to be like those kids today, the world today, because I actually disagree with that. When you look at the people that are filling the streets with the marches, they are the youth of America right now. In the face of COVID, these people they're standing up for what's right, and they are the next generation, which gives me hope so much, because I just go, good, I'm so glad that my future's in their hands. Oh, good. So if we can learn to empathize, if we can learn to suddenly, like you see that guy that, and I had a very long conversation about this. There was a gentleman who put this lovely thing out where he was like, you know what, Kaepernick, I was wrong for going after you.
All right.
I was wrong for going after you, and I see what you were fighting for. I was more mad at how you were fighting as opposed to paying attention to what you were fighting for. And you were also, there was a whole stratum of people that were encouraged to take umbrage. Oh, he's kneeling. They were encouraged to do this, and they took the bait. They took the bait as opposed to going, you do know why he's kneeling, right? This is civil disobedience. This is a protest to draw attention to the fact that people are being systematically killed in a grossly disproportionate way. And I'm not getting political. I'm talking about empathy here. Right. So somebody wrote this lovely piece about how they were wrong. And the first step to healing is empathizing with Kaepernick and his struggle. And then I saw people attacking that guy, not accepting his apology. And so I stopped, and I had to put the brakes on and go, isn't that what we're asking for? Yeah. To see the error in our ways and course correct. Right. And if we punish people for course correcting, then they aren't going to change. They're not going to speak up. They're not going to be vulnerable, stick their necks out. They're not going to choose to be brave. Do you know how hard it is to admit you're wrong on the internet? And in not like a performative way, but in a genuine, heartfelt way. And you know what? Even if it's a performative way, it's a start. It's better than not admitting you're wrong.
C.S. Lewis said something very, very interesting and very similar to what you're saying. He said, we all want progress, but if you're on the wrong road, progress means doing an about turn and walking back to the right road. In that case, the man who turns back soonest is the most progressive.
That's great.
Yeah.
Right? That's just it. Like, I think, we talk about creativity, we talk about hope and whatnot. Somebody once said, worry is a terrible use of imagination.
A misuse of the imagination.
Misuse of imagination. Hope is the inverse. Hope is an amazing use of creativity and imagination.
Right.
because it is visualizing the future that you are longing for. Right? And when you see it reflecting in other people when they are choosing empathy, we gotta stop canceling them or disparaging them for finally seeing the light that we're asking them to see.
And that's why we say hope brings health. You know, that's our little phrase, because that is the thing. Like, if we could all just stop and look around, you know, and just see that we're creating this discourse that doesn't need to be there. So if we could all just sit back and say, you know what, I'm sorry, this has gone too far. Let's just take a break.
And recognize trauma, right? Like you were saying, PTSD, like schools are starting to come to the realization that teenage and preteen bullies are not villains. They're modeling behavior that's probably at home. And they're punching beneath them because they're punched from above. And I'm not trying to embrace the villain in him. I'm trying to go, yeah, I know, and there's the victim here, and that kid that's getting bullied needs the love and attention and support as well. But this kid won't stop bullying until we heal his trauma.
Right. You know, the Dalai Lama was worried. He was most concerned for his own humanity when they were being pushed out of Tibet and they were being attacked, and he was afraid because he was starting to wish ill will or whatnot. I'll probably retract that, but but it was when he was starting to lose compassion for his fellow man, even though they were, you know, it's not about condemning people for their wrongdoing. It's about asking why. How can we help you? You know,
because they don't want to be that way.
Yeah.
You know, from a psychological perspective, trauma is actually being forced into the freeze response. You want to exercise your fight or flight. Let's say, for example, you're in a car accident, God forbid, and you're stuck in the car and you want to get out. You want to fight or flight, but you can't fight or flee. So instead, you're forced into this freeze response. And for a lot of people, this eagerness to fight bubbles just below the surface. So it could be argued that such a bully would actually be going to school and exercising the fight reflex that he couldn't do at home, which is something that empathy would once again bring.
Like people, there's a sugar high when one leans into a power move. Right? It gives you an adrenaline boost, and it gives you, like, you get these little squirts of dopamine that we then get addicted to. It's then channeling that addiction to your dopamine into a healthier, like you take Robert Downey Jr., who, you know, was a heroin addict, went to prison for it. He then shifted it into, I'm going to get addicted to exercise, taekwondo, eating well. Like, I will let those be my obsessive compulsive proclivities.
Rewiring those neurons.
And you know, I've for the last year and a half, I've been able to do daily meditation, which does rewire the brain. And I've always, again, because I came from a very like the Midwest in me did make me much more empathetic. Like, there was sort of treat your brother as yourself, love your neighbor. It doesn't mean that I probably don't have the inherent biases that are just there that I don't realize I have, the privilege that I know I was born into, and that you work then. You don't know, you know, I put on Facebook the other day, and it leans towards empathy, and it was about COVID at the time, and now it's even more about Black Lives Matter, which is just because it's not happening to you doesn't mean it's not happening.
Right.
And we tend to only see what's in front of us, and we think, you know, is it Aristotle's The Cave? Like, we only think.
Plato's allegory of the cave.
Plato. So like, if I'm facing the cave wall and I think that's the shape of the world, it's your own shadow.
Now it's time for a mini lesson.
Here is a quick paraphrase lesson on Plato's allegory of the cave. It first saw daylight 2,500 years ago in the year 517 BC.
Once upon a time, 3 prisoners were chained together in a cave. They were born there, they lived there their entire lives, and all they could see was their own shadows cast upon the cave wall. Based upon what they had seen, they deduced that the world was a terrible place.
Then, one day, a brave prisoner broke free from the shackles, found the exit to the cave, and saw the rest of the world for the first time. He saw the sun. He felt the wind against his skin. He felt the grass below his feet. The experience led him to realize that the world is far more beautiful than he assumed.
Excited, he ran back into the cave to tell his fellow prisoners the truth of the state of the world, that it was far more beautiful than they had assumed. They then looked back to their shadows cast upon the cave wall and said, "No, I'm sorry, you're very wrong."
So when people start to empathize and not seek a healthier tribe, man. We are tribal by nature. We need to be for survival. New York City is a tribe. Los Angeles is a tribe. People choose to go and join to be parts of urban areas or not. You are choosing a tribe. Mm-hmm. If I'm I want to go out of the country because I want country as my tribe. And then we find tribes within tribes within tribes. Like I said, D&D, that is a tribe. The comic book community is a tribe, and the drive to see beyond our own tribes. I mean, I prefer the term tribe as opposed to bubble because I don't want people to feel like something needs to be burst. It just needs to be examined and expanded.
Right.
Don't give up your white wine sitting on the porch listening to crickets moments, because that's your happy place and your blissful place. But then do realize when someone is in the streets getting gassed because people are disproportionately being killed, that is not going to threaten your ability to sit on the porch and drink white wine. If you could help them, if you can support them.
So I feel like I'm kind of sensing a parallel between what you were saying about how our dreams work and how an elephant's leg is similar to the trunk of a tree, and how we might better view the tribes that we belong to. So, yes, an elephant leg is like a trunk of a tree, and a trunk of a tree is like such and such. Perhaps if we could say, well, yes, our own tribe is like X, but this part of our tribe is also like this part of that other tribe, and that part of that tribe is like another tribe. So we can kind of realize that if one of us is cut, we all bleed. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So first and foremost, we are part of the human tribe, right? So rising tides lift all boats. We are past the point in our evolution where it's you or me who gets to eat.
Right.
We are past that point. There is plenty of food. There are plenty of resources. There's plenty of, so that we can, but I think deep somewhere in our lizard brain still lives this, I gotta eat.
Yes.
And you shouldn't.
Yeah.
The minute the pandemic hit, we suddenly saw a run on guns because we assume the worst in other people. Mm-hmm. You're going to try to take my stuff.
Right.
I got to protect it. You're going to try to, immediately, crisis hits, going to harm my family. But the reality is, we stop and look. Somebody said, I forget what, it was a meme, it was a great meme, but it was like, the pandemic that we thought was going to hit was going to like a Mad Max culture and people setting houses on fire to get at your pantry. Now, yes, was there rioting and looting during the yes. But it's like the reality was people found a way to show bread videos of them making bread and like writing songs and Zoom meetings. And it's like, no, it's that great line. It always chokes me up, but did you watch True Detective?
I did, with Matthew McConaughey.
Matthew McConaughey. At the end of it, he's like, I look up at the sky at Woody Harrelson's and I see all the darkness and the pinpoints of light, and then And then McConaughey says, well, when I see the stars, I'm misquoting it, but he goes, I see the stars, I think the light is winning.
Oh, yes.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's so good because it's true. It's like you could have this sea of darkness, but what are your eyes drawn to?
Right.
You know, you had mentioned earlier that all people are creative and they just may not realize it, or they may think, you know.
Well, my dad was creative in the way he fixed a car or built a shed.
Right.
He was an artist. My mom's an artist when she bakes. Like,
that's great. One thing I love about people who embrace their creativity is, are you familiar with the philosopher Wittgenstein?
no.
He said, and this is something I've repeated so many times, many psychiatric patients, many. He said that language is a powerful thing, and yet it can't even describe the aroma of coffee.
Right.
The job of art, the job of creative expression, I believe, is to speak on the terms of that aroma. On such terms where, in such categories where words simply don't work. And I think that's part of the reason why actors and musicians and poets and the like are so needed today, because we've moved to a profoundly, or the future will say infamously, languid way of living, and no two words will ever describe what it is to suffer on the streets as a black man or a black woman, or
like we use it for mental illness,
Right.
Like when you are struck with that mental illness, you can have a doctor that will talk to you who's gone to school and dedicated his life for that. But unless you've been through it yourself, it's going to be difficult to really connect.
Exactly.
Well, here's the interesting thing. My reaction to that lovely quote about coffee is, you can't describe the aroma of coffee, but you can describe your reaction to smelling it, and then that is empathy.
Right.
So if I read how you react to it, I'm looking through your eyes, which by definition is empathy.
How many times have you walked through the street and someone looked at Todd, but instead of seeing Todd, they saw one of the characters that you were playing?
Of the people that do know who I am, there is a very big, what they're often surprised to see is I'm not scary. I am very known for being the bad guy. I'm known for it. I'm 6'2", my voice is like a garbage truck. I have dark circles around my eyes. Like my life, my roles lend themselves to villainy. Plus, I also like to weave a little funny in there, which makes it a little interesting and whatnot. I just did, it's currently on demand. I did a film called Think Like a Dog, where I am the voice of the dog, which is the closest to me that I have ever played. I'm not kidding. It is. He's an optimist. He's there's an earnestness to him. He's sarcastic, but he's not mean-spirited. And he certainly is not the villain. He's the hero of the story. So, like I said, a lot of people are surprised that I'm much nerdier and goofier. Like, I'm just a comedy boy from Chicago who loves Star Wars.
And I'd like to stick with that a little bit, if you don't mind. So you've had people who were surprised that you were actually kinder than you were portrayed.
I didn't say kinder. I'm probably horrible. No. But I would say I'm not scary.
Right. And yet there still seem to be a lot of people who are judging others and kind of assigning caricatures to people they see on the street without actually kind of getting to know them. So like someone would get to know you and see, wow, Todd's a great guy, and he's funny, and he's intelligent, he's obviously well-read, and he's a lot taller than he looks on TV, but if they were to stop only at the caricature of you, or the part of you were playing, they might not really understand you.
There's there by the grace that I have not experienced racism directed towards me. Again, I'm half Polish and half Norwegian. I look vaguely ethnic. People go, are you Greek? What are you? They don't know. So I have not had firsthand, it's not a life that I've lived other than through story and through history. We forget, and look, it's probably privileged that I forget. I do not think about the color of my skin when I walk into a store, but I haven't had to. African Americans, Mexican Americans, Arab Americans, Indian Americans, they're very aware. Much more, they've had to be. We had an experience where we have this amazing carpenter who's working on something for us. We sent him to a local hardware store, and he goes, "I'm never going back there."
No.
Because they were horrible to me. And my wife's like, "What? Horrible to what?" Then we love that place. We get to. We get to love that place. That place loves us. There's so much to do, which is where imagination and hope comes in. It's like, well, is there a nobler pursuit? I think not.
It's beautiful.
Okay, so a lot of our listeners or whatnot, they have a difficult time getting up out of bed at times. Like, it's that simple, you know, like, and with everything that you've been through and everything, you know, the rejection and all that, what could you say to someone that just can't, you know, like right now people are losing their jobs and it's tough, you know, and people are having a hard time getting up just to start the day. So what do you think, do you have any words of encouragement for them?
What are the benefits of sticking through it?
Well, I have had circumstance-induced depression, but not clinical.
Right.
I mean, I lost my father in September last year. I lost a dear friend 3 weeks ago. So I work through grief just like anybody else does, but that is circumstantial, and we're also hardwired for that kind of grief, the loss of a parent, where there's an organic process to it.
But even then, sometimes you can't. Even then, sometimes it's hard. I mean,
look, it's absolutely okay to go, today is a day I'm sleeping. I'm sleeping today. I'm going to give myself that self-care and allow myself to sleep. The drive to get up, you know, it's often, and you know more about this, having studied psychology, just make your bed. Make the coffee. Like, do one tiny thing that puts the world right in your eyes within your purview of control. And that small circle of feed the cat, make the bed, make the coffee. Then once the coffee's made, you can maybe pull a curtain out, and if you're looking at the city, look at the cloud. like just exercise one thing that you can control. Do one thing. I don't want to get lofty and say, start a journal. Like, I don't like that. To me is 100 miles away from the person who goes, I don't want to get out of bed, or I don't want to wake up tomorrow.
Right. You know, and that's what you said is perfect. One of our favorite little movies that we'll reference at times is What About Bob? You know, with Bill Murray.
Baby steps. Baby steps.
Yeah.
Yes, love that, and it's so true. It's a great way to stay focused and practice mindfulness, staying in the present.
Well, you know, it's interesting because I always reference Alan Watts, because the older I get, the less I see life as a journey, and he talks about life in terms of music and dance. It is about, going back to Maslow, it is about playing in the sunbeam. It's not about just survival, but for a lot of people it is just about survival. But if you can find those tiny incremental moments that allow the sunbeam to come in, whether it is the aroma of that coffee.
Right.
I made a pot of coffee and it smells so good. So literally my life is only what I'm doing right now.
In the moment.
And for the very moment. If that's all I'm doing, you can't tell a person to just cheer up if they're depressed. That doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. That's like telling somebody, just go ahead and walk it off after they just broke their leg. Like, just walk it off. It's fine.
Yeah. No, but there are constants, and those constants are achievement, accomplishment, worth.
Right.
And if making your bed is just a tiny little moment of accomplishment that you can go, okay, order. Okay, good. I have control over something. And if literally it's, I'm just going to swing my legs over the side of the bed.
Yeah.
Right.
And sit there like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
I love it.
It's moving from that place of stasis.
Yeah.
It, dare I say, is an act of creativity.
Yeah.
I love it.
To kick your legs over the side of the bed.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
There was one more thing that Maslow said that I think very much applies to this day. He said that when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yep. I've often said some people are just hammers looking for nails.
Yeah, there you go.
But then you go, what made them a hammer and how can we help them unmake that? Because nobody wants to be a hammer.
That's powerful.
That is so true. Incredibly true.
Yeah.
Well, Todd, this interview has been incredible. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you guys for having me. This is a delight.
Wow, what an honor to speak to such a creative and interesting man.
I know, right? Especially because surviving in the entertainment industry is all about pushing through adversity. Isn't life full of adversities?
Right, that's what this interview has been all about.
He stayed true to his passions. He changed social circles from ones that were critical of him to ones that supported him and even shared his interests.
He looked at his challenges as a numbers game and not something personal.
He clearly thinks deeply about those things that interest him, which just makes him even better.
Todd stayed true to his creative side and created opportunities to express his art even when the odds weren't in his favor.
And he cares deeply for other people, all people, and he works very hard on empathizing. Empathy being a key word. What wisdoms jumped out at you? I'm certain the more we listen, the more we will learn and be able to apply to our own life.
And make sure you check out his most recent work, Think Like a Dog on Demand, Kim Possible on Disney Plus, a film directed by Justine Bateman called Violet, The Way Back with Ben Affleck, and that's also on demand, and the TV series 12 Monkeys, found on Hulu. You won't want to miss them.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this latest episode of hopematters.life. We hope you got as much out of it as we did. We want to know what you think. Please send all questions and comments to hopematters.life@gmail.com, or feel free to call us at 305-707-HOPE. Thank you for listening to Hope Matters.life, where hope brings health.